even in my practice, by the time a person gets to me, they've tried BetterHelp. Yes, I'm putting y'all out there, BetterHelp. they've tried a lot of different things, and the constant thing I keep hearing is like, man, I've been doing all sorts of therapy for 20 years, and how did I get with you in 4 to 6 months and accelerate this quickly? Because we're focusing on root causes. I don't really care about all the external stuff.
Let's impact some men today. I think we're gonna do a great job.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Man Podcast, where we are here to connect men in pursuit of their potential. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm your host, Ted Phaeton, and I'm encouraging you to join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to invite you to take your personal and professional growth to the next level by sharing this podcast, hitting that subscribe button, catching a new episode each and every single week, and also to the fellas listening and watching. I encourage you to join the Noble Knights Mastermind group. That's where you can find the support, accountability, and mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Don't be the lone wolf, fellas. Join us and become a part of a community of like-minded men on a mission to improve themselves and elevate their capacity for life. And that's what we do here on the podcast each and every single day. And I'm excited to get some wind in our sails from my guest today, certified counselor with IABC, former program coordinator for nonprofit, podcaster, consultant, and friend, Jahmaal Marshall, on the podcast. I had to let him know, man, we've been chopping it up too much. We were friends. I don't care what you say.
What's up, man?
Man, Jahmaal, it's a pleasure having you on the show. And before we jump into our conversation, which I know will be full of laughter, but also seriousness and value, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to talk to the audience in your own words, introduce yourself, and give your own introduction so I don't have to mess it up. So please, the microphone and the show is yours, and then we can jump into the conversation afterwards.
You got it. Hey, what's up, everybody? So I'm Jahmaal Marshall, again, certified counselor, practitioner, and consultant, and podcaster myself. So I work in the area of tackling burnout at the root with proven methods to 2x your time and maximize your productivity. The reason I believe in root cause methods is because a lot of counseling, therapy, and even coaching comes from a CBT background, and that's cognitive behavioral therapy. Most coaches don't even know that, but as counselors do. And therapy will focus on your behavior. I focus on the belief that informs your behavior. So I'm all about getting your results. And that's me. I have a newsletter, Listen and Speak, Why Not? And also a public speaker. So just kind of loving being here. And more importantly, for 16 plus years, loving impact from one to many lives. So.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic. And so I'm already going off my notes because you mentioned CBT, and I would describe this as I've told people, I'm like, listen, okay, if I told you don't think of a pink elephant, I've just infiltrated your thoughts, right? And if I remind you of a traumatic or experience or the loss of a loved one, I potentially have influenced your feelings. However, if I were to come to your household and I say, Jahmaal, come outside, and I try and take you outside, there's some physical resistance there in which you can stop me from doing so. So I've always leaned into behavior being the hack for impacting your thoughts and your feelings, right? In terms of something that you have the most control over. For people who might not be familiar with CBT or the practices in which you preach in terms of the belief behind what we do and why we do what we do, why is it so important to understand the why behind the what? And you can give us a little bit of an intro to CBT too for anybody who's not familiar.
Right. I'll try to keep it short and sweet because we only have limited time here. But with cognitive behavioral therapy, it is going to be a way of tackling what is going on in the brain through repeated patterns of behavior, and then going in and even using specific methods to then change those patterns. Now, externally, CBT is actually very effective. For those of us that are trained in it, it works. You hear a lot of contrarian point of view. I will tell you that it works, but it actually works for a limited amount of time because the focus is on your behavior. And so imagine your audience is mostly guys. So imagine that you're called to be an extra on the newest Wolverine and Deadpool Part 2. Obviously,
Nice.
if you got a gut, you're headed to the gym. You're probably going to see a personal trainer. Most folks in Hollywood, they're going to see some of the best in the business. They're getting them in shape in a matter of 3 months. So they are changing their eating habits, changing when they wake up, changing when they go to the gym, even doing something what you call is it's called carb cycling. One day I'm going to eat a bunch of carbs. The next day I'm eating a bunch of protein. This is my day when I work out. This is my day when I do my HIIT workout. So behavior, external behavior is changing. And guess what? It's bringing external results. And those are really, really good. When it comes to burnout, when it comes to stress, when it comes to addictions, when it comes to certain matters of the mind and the heart and traumatic experiences that inform how we behave now, cognitive behavioral therapy can lack effectiveness because the focus is on your behavior. You ever see in the wellness space a lot of stop quotes? Those drive me absolutely crazy. Stop doing this. Stop doing this with your wife. Stop doing this with your husband. Stop doing this with your family. Stop doing this with your manager. Manager, stop doing this. That person cannot just stop because they've been doing that for years. That is their way of life because that is how their neural pathways are dug in their brain. And so I don't want to lose you
Mhm.
guys. Let's bring it down to earth. I built a whole global brand by walking through the woods here in DC. I walked through 4 different Civil War forts. These are well dug paths that have been here for over 200 years. If I wanted to go an opposite way or take a different direction, I would literally need to take a machete out and begin to dig a path, which I'm not going to do. I ain't got that type of time on my hands.
Mm-mm.
Because of that, within your brain, think about it. In order to dig a new pathway, you literally are taking a machete out and disrupting the natural pattern. And so the stop behavior sort of system that we can run on in a lot of coaching is only effective seasonally. But you want to get a person results that are sustainable, that produce longevity. And this is why I focus on
Mm.
the root causes because one phrase I've coined and trademarked, what you believe will always inform how you behave. That will
Mm.
never not be
Mm.
true.
Say that one more time because I don't think the listeners heard it.
What you believe will always inform how you behave.
Mm. So Wolverine, Deadpool Wolverine 2 recording comes, you're the extra, crush it. Then afterwards, what happens? Go back to your old habits. You're still you, right? Your identity is still who you are. And now that you're no longer the extra, you're not preparing for that. What happens? Where do we find ourselves?
Well, there's no more 5 a.m. regimen. There definitely isn't any more Shilajit, turmeric, and all the other supplements that you've been taking to sort of burn away those calories and get your body ready to receive it. There's probably a whole lot less protein going into your system because that's going to be the thing that builds the lean muscle. Um, and you've probably started eating sweets again. Whatever habits you had that you went into that with, you take those out with you because the inside never changed. Um,
Mm.
Now I don't know, you got mostly guys. So, with females, skin is real important. You hear wives and girlfriends, they talk about the facials and all that other stuff like that. But when they really need some deep work done, they're not going to the spa. They're going to the dermatologist because it's like, I got to deal with what's beneath your skin. What's going on at the
Mm.
core? And some of that digging is painful. And so this is why, like, said person can go on that set and crush it, and then 4 months later, it's like, oh, I have a gut again. How'd you get that gut back? Because the mind, the inside never changed. You changed the external, and for a while, let's say that person that got in tip top shape for about 4, 5, and 6 months, they'll still remain in some pretty good shape, especially if they've never been in
Yeah.
that shape before. There's going to be some external maintenance, but again, what happens in the inner sanctum always makes its way to the outer core. I'll say that in English. What happens
Mm.
inside always makes its way to the surface.
Yeah. Or what you do in the dark will shine in the light.
Come on now.
So if someone's listening to this,
Mhm.
and we have some women listeners too, because a lot of what we talk about is applicable to just human development and moving forward. If they want lasting change, like Jahmaal, man, I can't stop going to this website when I'm bored. I look around, I'm by myself. I have my little ritual. I dim the lights. Turn on the computer, and it's on. I just can't stop this, no matter how many times I try. Or Jahmaal, end of the week or end of the day after a day of work, I gotta go get my beer shot. It starts with that, but then next thing I know, I'm stumbling home and I'm hungover tomorrow for work.
Mm.
These behaviors just keep perpetuating, and no matter how hard I try, I might have temporary success. I quit for a week, I quit for a month, shoot, I quit for a couple years, but I always go back. How do we instill that lasting change and change for good, man?
I'm gonna try to answer that question, because it
It's heavy. I
obviously,
know.
yeah, I'm gonna do my best because it's gonna be different from person to person. But let's go at a high level. One, I would say to said person who asked that question, where are you hurting, and where are you in pain? Um, I would venture to say everyone under the sound of my voice has flown in something, in some sort of plane or some sort of device. We know, or even we see it on our vehicles. We call it cruise control or autopilot. See where you're on autopilot and where you've been in a pattern for years, and then equate that pattern. Like one thing I have my clients do is journal. I tell each of them another phrase I coined: you what you write down, you have to reckon with. When you write it down, it becomes like
Mm,
reality. And another phrase I've coined with trademarking this whole thing is: a pattern remains a pattern until it is disrupted. And so look at those patterns that have been in your life for years and say, where have I been on autopilot? Where do I constantly defer to? When I'm lonely, when I'm tired, when I'm angry, when my feelings are hurt, or when something didn't go the way I envisioned, or what is my
mm,
nightly pattern? Now, these are some behavioral things where you're just these are things you can do on your own. Will you do it? Well, that has yet to be seen. And also, if there is an addictive pattern, like I think you mentioned, you didn't want to say the P word, I'll say it for you.
yeah.
But if there's a use of pornography, or like every night you have to have a certain amount of wine or alcohol before you go to sleep, you are a functioning alcoholic, and we've been there. Um, this is when you have to actually get scientific, but sometimes our brains are used to a certain amount of dopamine. We wonder,
Hmm.
like, why can't I break? Why is it that, like, for 1 to 3 weeks I'm kind of good, and then I'll find myself back on the computer unloading, or I find myself back, down that one aisle of the store that I can't take anyone 18, 21 and under. Like, why do I keep doing this? Because your brain has gotten used to a overload of dopamine that it provides, and even when you have different difficulty, I call it, one thing I work with clients on is developing trigger awareness. What has triggered that response in you, and when you're aware of it, how do you then, or what has triggered that reaction? A trigger is an event that connotes a reaction. How are you then pausing to make an informed response? And a lot of us,
Hmm.
especially guys, I'm not gonna dog us guys because I'm a man myself. We typically won't pause to make that informed response. We're doers. And so it's easy for us. That's why we're such an endangered species. Those statistics are on your website, to make those snap decisions over and over and over again and not even understand, like, how did I get in this pattern again? I've seen the coach. I've said the prayers. I've I even contacted my work's EAP. I got another business coach. I'm part of a group. We talked about this. How did this happen again? Because deep down at the root, what you believe about you is still going to inform how you behave. If your wife hurt you,
Mm.
your girlfriend hurt you, even if your fellas hurt you, if your church hurt you, that pain not being processed has to go somewhere. And if you haven't developed a new pattern, something's got to numb that pain. And it's more than likely going to be what your brain and body is used to.
Mm. You said something that was powerful, and some of us might know someone in our lives who fits this description of that functioning addict, right? And the sad part about that is, how do you how do you let someone know that they're in pain? Because sometimes these substances, these habits, these routines, they numb us so well we don't know we're hurting. And I even you mentioned whatever you write down you need to reckon with, and I was writing down just the numbness and how I used to feel numb. And I have so much gratitude and joy now, and when I think of the things I'm thankful for, I tear up, man. It's amazing. But I remember when I didn't have that emotion. I didn't have the palette of emotions I have now. And I just described it as, man, I'm just numb. But when I reflect on it, I wasn't numb. I was just used to the pain. But nobody informed me that I was in pain, right? So how can you inform somebody if you see someone going through this pain and they're functioning and they're like, I'm fine, I'm good. This is just how I am. This is how I operate. What's wrong with a couple, drinks after work? I had a long day and I make a lot of money. I earned it.
Mhm.
But how do you let them know, like, no, bro, I think there's something more going on here?
I'm going to give an answer that's not going to be popular at all. You don't.
Mm.
And I think of people like you and I, and just the way our personalities, the way we emote, the way our personalities manifest. We're empaths, so we can kind of feel and sense like, oh, there's more going on here than meets the eye. And typically, me, I've been doing this 16 years, human behavior, so I can read a person's mail within 5 minutes of meeting them, and vice versa. People who like me, like, it's like, oh, you just read me. Um, when you do that, you're going to automatically get resistance, because if they don't see it and you saying it, it's just like you're going to get resistance, you're going to get defense. Sometimes life and brick walls have to inform them of their need. And
Mm.
a lot of times we want to save people or even each other when we're endeared towards each other from the brick wall. And the brick wall is the very thing they need. It is an on ramp to their transformation.
Mm. So they need that wake up call.
Yeah, some of the greatest gains are preceded by losses. And I never. I mean, I think you know me well enough, Ted. I want to see everybody win. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even in my practice, by the time a person gets to me, they've tried BetterHelp. Yes, I'm putting y'all out there, BetterHelp. They've tried a lot of different things, and the constant thing I keep hearing is like, man, I've been doing all sorts of therapy for 20 years, and how did I get with you in 4 to 6 months and accelerate this quickly? Because we're focusing on root causes. I don't really care about all the external stuff, because you think about even those behaviors. People want to fix the behavior, but like that is symptomatic of something going on deep down inside of you. And it's the same thing with me. I was like, why am I always the first to get to work and the last to leave? I'm here
Mm-hmm.
located just by locality. DC is high achiever central. You walk down, I mean,
Yeah.
90% of us here are just high performers. And why do I feel like, when I go out, like I have to have an alcoholic beverage? Or why, when I feel like I've been slighted, or I feel like I'm not winning, because I made straight A's, Dean's List, everything's always excellent, every performance appraisal, that I find myself on the computer looking at stuff that, would make a jailbird blush. Like, whoa, like what's going on with me? You know? And it's because of when you were a little kid, Jahmaal, you weren't told by your dad that I'm proud of you. You were told that
Mm-hmm.
by your mom, but it carries a different weight. It carries a different depth. You grew up in a abusive household. You had a heroin addict and a crack addict for dad, as well as an alcoholic. And so everything was unpredictable. So everything was out of control. So you found a way to control everything. You found a way to control
Mm.
everything by not kicking up any dust, not troubling the water. So you said yes to everything. In romantic relationships, as a professional, you became the top dude on the team because you never troubled the waters. Um, you became the person with the disease to please, but like you became the dependable one, but you also were full of resentment. And so when you felt the
Yep.
type of way, you may have not shown it outwardly, but you took it to where, okay, I feel some pain internally. I gotta numb this pain somehow. And you found a way to function. And because you didn't want to kick up any dust, no one could know anything, because no one could ever see you sweat, because you're the shoulder everyone leans on. You're the voice of reason.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one in the friend group who gives the advice. You look like you want to say
Does
something.
it sound like anybody watching? Does it like, man, you just hit so many people. Like when the pastor's on Sunday talking directly to you, and you're like, hold on. Like I think you just hit so many people, because I was gonna say 18 minutes in, I'm just getting to my notes. That like I knew this was gonna be a freestyle, man. But in the few calls we had, I noticed you have a great smile. And when I did the research and we talk and I learn about your childhood and your upbringing, I imagine it wasn't always easy to smile, or maybe the smile wasn't always genuine, right? And when we talk, I genuinely feel as though your smile is genuine. How did we get to that genuine smile?
Ted, you already know my answer. Like, I love it because Ted's my brother, so I love when he answers me questions he knows the answer to. But my faith is huge for me, bro, and
Yeah.
I can say I definitely would not be here without God. I have no idea. I'm almost gonna be 40. I'm pretty much in 3 months. I will be 40, and if I look like what I've been through, I'd have a face it would be all white. It would just my hair would be all white, and I just wrinkles everywhere because I don't look like somebody's been shot at twice and held at gunpoint, or someone who has been thrown from one side of the room to another. That grew up in a lot of unpredictability. But I can say my faith, and even the faith of my mom as a child, helped me to like, okay, there's got to be hope even in all this darkness, and you live with this person that you hate. um and I remember when I would shake people's hands, because I started my career at Department of Justice in the government. You shake hands and meet a lot of people, and I was the only black dude who worked on the director's floor. So you have to just, you got to network, and it's kind of like that's your forte. And um, people would often say, "Man, you're one of the most brilliant people who is working here, but I notice you don't look at me when you talk to me." And I didn't realize, I didn't pick it up until a couple years later, that Jahmaal, you don't look at people because you're ashamed. I was
Mm.
functioning, and I also, my faith was a big part of me, but I wasn't also living it. And so you couple that with religion, and I'm speaking to folks who I'm talking about. Yeah, religion and relationship with God is very different. I was super religious, and so I was very ashamed when I was, if I was in immorality, if I was in pornography, if I was drinking, I had all this shame, because I was like, well, I'm trying to do the right things, but I can't get it right. And that, when
Mm.
I interacted with people, I would look over their heads, because I felt like if they saw me, if they looked into my eyes, they would know something about me, and I would get from them the same rejection I got from my dad when I was little. So I was living life as a avoider, high performer, but avoider. And so
Yeah.
the smile came from in 2006. This was years in the making, but God actually used me to lead my dad to Christ. And he came in and he was so drunk, and his eyes were bloodshot red. And he told me about his childhood. He told me about my grandfather, that he had approached my grandmother and told her to abort him, but she wouldn't. He told my dad that to his face. So he hated his father. And I thought about,
Mm.
I really hated you. And he told me so many other things, and it wasn't to get me to feel sorry for him, but it endeared me to him. And I said, "Hey, can you go to church tomorrow?" Just. And I wasn't living perfectly, but we were trying. And I was just like, you know, I remember he went and he talked with my pastor afterwards, my former pastor then, and he gave his life to Christ, man. It's just like, and it was years of a gradual transformation. But I remember when I went away, before becoming a counselor, I shared with you, I went away for 7 months, and then 13 months total, to get my own healing and my own training. um I remember coming back and talking to him, and I was like, man, what have you done with my dad? And so watching him change and literally go from death to life, that's been a huge part. Like, when you see this smile, it's because I watched a man that I once hated and who was my worst enemy become my best friend.
We could end the podcast there, but I'm not gonna let it stop right now, man. This is Thank you for sharing that, Jahmaal. I just want to say that's a beautiful, beautiful arc, beautiful story, because there's fathers listening to this who might have thought they blew it, you know, and that right there can give them hope that like you can mend that relationship. And there's probably sons listening to this who haven't spoken to their father for a while, and they might not think they can change, you know. But like you said, and I wrote it down, there's got to be hope in this darkness, and that's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us pushing forward. What were the benefits of your childhood?
You know, I often say, we're all looking for the white picket fence, leave it to beaver life. Um, if that's handed to us, we're Americans. I'm sure your audience is global like mine. So for those who aren't Americans, that's just a little show we used to watch back in the day.
What's
But
up, Germany?
I will say the benefits is that it has formed and shaped me into the man that I am today. And I wouldn't have written it that way. I would have written, being the perfect child. I'm the youngest of four, being the perfect athlete, having a perfect parents. I didn't pick my parents, and they didn't pick me either, but they birthed me. Um, and even, you know, the sensitivity, as a certified counselor, like if I'm not sensitive, I really can't understand from an empathic standpoint what is going on with my clients. You know, um, I do have female clients as well, and so it helps me to know how to communicate with them on a level, not a which they just understand, but a level that's effective for them. So it made me more sensitive to need, because a lot of times I had to be the man of the house, and it grew me
Mm.
up before, you know, long before I I wanted to, because sometimes he always provided. We never went without. But there would be times he would be like so drunk or so high that it's like, okay, well, somebody's got to fill that area. So it matured me, um, and advanced me in ways that really have given me an acumen to know how to communicate with anyone across the globe. I get my communication skills from my dad, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
But having that childhood and so many different lapses where you're just so much unpredictability, you learn entrepreneurship almost before I even knew what it was. It's like, okay, well, let's find a solution because we have to, And
Mhm.
when I talk to God and when I'm journaling, it's like, God, I wouldn't have written it that way, but that is the story written for me. The days written for me, as Psalm 139 says, as though there were none of them. You know,
Mhm.
that is the dark pass and the deep canyon that has led to the mountain from where I serve other people.
Yeah, I appreciate that because it can be so hard for us to look at our adversity, look at our lack, and be thankful for it. Um, right? And when you say you wouldn't have written it that way, I think of and I know it's an Alex Hermosi clip where he talks about if you wanted these attributes in a person, what would you put them through? And I really like that thought process because if you want someone who's strong, you have to put them under heavy weight, right? Like if you want somebody who's able to communicate and articulate, you're going to have to instill that somehow, some way, shape, or form. If you want someone who's empathetic, they have to understand the range of emotions that other people will feel. And I can only imagine what that burden is like.
If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Phaeton here, host of the Modern Man podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals.
Check out themodernmanpodcast.com to carry that empath and feeling the emotions of others. So I know it could be hard to be thankful for that, but the fact that we could chat about this, I'm hoping that a listener is thinking to themselves, okay, maybe I could turn this around. Maybe, this doesn't have to be my end. Maybe this is the climax, right? And this is where the story really picks up and really gets exciting. What was it like when you started noticing um, the impacts that your trauma, your childhood was having on your adult relationships? And how did you start cleaning it up? I imagine the framework you have now was built through trials, tribulations, experience, and working with plenty of clients. So you've perfected it. But oftentimes, the first clinical trial is ourselves.
Yeah.
So what was that like?
It it was, and I didn't even realize it at first because you got to think this is teenager, young adult, early 20s Jamal who has so much energy, and a limitless amount, and you still have that air of invincibility, but it was tiring because I had that need to please, man. Um, and so I said yes to everything. I mean, I remember even being involved like in like four different, actually eight, seven different ministries, and like I was volunteering outside of that, and I was working a full time job, and I was going to Regent University, so I had a lot going on, but because I just never said no. And even I was even in relationships, I was super apologetic, apologizing for stuff that wasn't even a crime. It was just like and then, but because I'm also very direct, I'm super friendly. People always know I'm always a friendly guy, but I'm also very direct. So when I if I come, you earned it. And it's like, ooh, that kind of came out of nowhere because it would build up. It's like, did it have to come that hard and that fast, or could it have been piecemealed over time? Confronting the
Mhm.
matter right then on edge instead of giving into that fear of rejection and kind of holding it in and just letting it build up and then boom, volcanic eruption. So that would kind of be, and those eruptions can either burn. They obviously will burn a bridge, and about volcanic eruptions we know build new bridges. And so in some ways it has served me well because it burned a bridge from someone or some ones I wasn't supposed to be around, and it also
Yeah.
built new bridges to, okay, this is where I'm supposed to go. But since you're asking the question, what was it like? Like that's what it was like as a worker. I think I explained it earlier. Man, super diligent, very dependable. Always known as the one like he's gonna get it done, but also the one who, if there was a toxic work environment, like it fit me perfectly. Like the narcissist knew, like, oh, okay, I can just Jahmaal fears rejection, so I can even say certain things and market this a certain way or frame this a certain way, and I got him like butter in my hands, and so that's what I
Mhm.
was like as a professional. Um, and even in the friend group, being the one to let everyone, like, you ever seen those with like landfills when somebody's building like a new house, new townhome, and they're just
Yeah.
dumping stuff. Like that's what I was in the friend group, because everybody knew, like, if I need some chair time, like long before I became a certified counselor, I've been doing it. Long before I had the training and all the education, and it's just like I needed a space to. I remember the first time I like actually opened up and the person told me to breathe, and I said, I've been waiting for years because I'm always the one that everyone's coming to, but I feel like I never have a space where I can just be vulnerable, where I can be everything I am and everything I'm not. I'm always
Yeah.
having to be on, and so that's how it
Mhm.
looked. Like I was always on. It's almost like when you walk the red carpet, like, man, you better make sure you suck your stomach in, get that suit looking right, get them cufflinks good, and had
Mhm.
those shoes looking good, and that was like my life every day. And I'm like, man, I should have a face full of great. When I think about it, man, I don't even know how I have all this black hair on my head
Hey,
because
man, I'm jealous.
no, no, no,
I'm
no offense.
37. I got more.
I'm just in answering the question, man. I'm just like all that stress and all of that repression, man. Like that's what it was like, bro. And so developing the modality, that I have now, um it actually developed that because I began to speak the language. Like your ideal customer, quote unquote, or client, is a past version of you, and it's so many
Yeah.
of them out there, both male and female alike. you know Females are a little bit quicker to latch on because with males, we're doers. It's like, oh no, that's not my problem, that's not my issue. you know and with females, it's like, they're okay to admit, like, yeah, that's me. you know
Mhm.
but with guys, sometimes they have to suffer certain losses, and like my whole thing is, and I'm going to say this: don't wait until you hit a brick wall to reach out and get help, because some things can blow up in your face. Don't be the one to, I just got experience stuff. Experience is a teacher of fools. I can tell
Mhm.
you, someone who God's grace has been on my life. It's some things I wish I never would experience, in some dark alleys I wish I never would have gone down, and in some environments, even as a professional. It's like, how have I spent this many months or years here, in this place? And so I would just say, please don't be the one that is that hard headed. We've heard it before. A hard head makes a soft behind, and it really,
Mhm.
really does. So I hope I answered your question.
Oh, you certainly did, because I think a lot of folks, they're on that road, and they're on autopilot. They're driving and they're not paying attention to where they're going, and they're heading towards a brick wall. And it takes a course correction or just a course check. See which direction you're going in. Anyone listening to this, they don't have to jump on thinking like, "Oh man, I got a problem." But maybe just look in the mirror and just audit. Or you mentioned journaling. How do you feel? What what are you doing? Where are you going? And some intentional questions and honest. I'm going to say it again: an honest assessment and audit of your current life environment and trajectory can inform so much. And if you are honest and you look at that, the choice becomes yours and what you want to do next. And I had to write that down. Experience is the teacher of fools. That was huge, and that was fantastic. We're very similar, man. You mentioned being brothers, bro, and I had a very similar experience in terms of just people pleasing. And I grew up in a household that just both my parents were immigrants. They would work extra hours to send me to Catholic school. Their education was their thing. And it was never good enough. I remember coming home with a report card, A's and B's, and there's one C. And oh, Lord, did I hear it about that C. And I just remember feeling so depleted. And a lot of that led to me people pleasing and being a nice guy and compromising my boundaries
Mm,
because of the fear of rejection. I would compromise boundaries and goals and things that I wanted to do because I wanted to preserve the relationship with people, Just like you, I didn't have a good relationship with no. And it was scary when I started implementing my boundaries because I knew. And it actually happened. When I started implementing boundaries, some relationships fell off,
Hmm.
but other relationships flourished, which was kind of crazy to see. What is it about boundaries that some of these guys need to hear if they're not comfortable with the word no, if they don't have a good relationship with the word no, or maybe they are people pleasers or they're nice guys? How can boundaries change things?
Uh, if I know most of your audience is high performers, and you probably guys live in really nice neighborhoods, some of the best and well manicured gardens are guarded by a boundary line, a picket fence, or some line. Everything just cannot get in. And it
Hmm.
is important that you are keen on what and who has access to you. And a lot of times when we think about boundaries, we're always thinking about other people or, oh, this is my toxic job or the team that's kind of pulling so much out of me that I'm having to manage. Sometimes you have to draw a boundary line with yourself and that past version of yourself. Or when you look in that mirror, like you said something about feeling, feel the feels, men. With men, I don't want to still speak to the ladies because ladies, I'm not saying you have this licked. You could use some work in this area, but with guys, feel the feels. Get take the ball from out of your hand, get your head from under the hood of the car, and actually get off the video game, get off Call of Duty, and feel the feels. And you're not gonna like it. It is painful and it sucks. But I'm telling you, as somebody who did leg day yesterday and is feeling it today, that pain leads to amazing progress in your journey. And when
Hmm.
you feel those feels and take them somewhere, don't take them where you normally are used to taking them, which could be into bed with somebody that's not your wife, or into a screen, or to a bottle, or whatever the thing you may do, or to your job to work 80 hours when you probably should be working 34 to 40. Yeah, high performers, I'm speaking to you. Feel the feels. Because until you feel the feels and actually confront them and name them, the pattern will continue. Why? Because it feels safe. Um, One of the quotes that I've trademarked with my clients is that the problem is in the pattern, but the power is in the pause. And when you pause to feel those feels and even the ugly space of that existence and then process them accordingly, that's when you're willing to do the root work that will inform your behavior, and it will
Hmm.
inform even your boundaries. Your boundaries are for you, they're not for other people. So when you respect your boundaries, other people will too. And also go through the withdrawals. Those first 4 months is tough. The withdrawals of, okay, relationships are changing. The withdrawals of, okay, I think I want to preserve that. Why is John not calling me no more? We used to kick it. Hey, maybe John is not, he was a part of your past. He's not a part of your present and your future. Um,
Hmm.
you'll hear Jahmaal say it often. People have a pair of shoes so they can walk. Let them walk.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. Hey, let them walk, man. Last couple questions as we wrap up, and we talked a lot about burnout, and I know with your one-on-one coaching, you focus mainly on 90 days because it's not going to happen before that. Or if someone's like, man, I could just do this for a few weeks, I'll get the hang of it, and I'm good to go. If someone's at that point of burnout, they've tried it all. You mentioned that I've worked on all these things, I just can't kick it, and they find themselves calling with you. Why 90 days, and why um, is it important to have that length of time?
Right. Scientifically, it's proven it initially takes 90 days to change the neuroplasticity of our brain. But that whole 21 days for habit building, I don't know who in the world came up with that, but find them and slap them. Um, and so there's science behind it. And also, we got to think about all the stuff we talked about, all the worries, cares, fears, mindsets, even will sets and addictions that kind of make us up an amalgamation of what we become. We didn't get that way overnight. You think it's going to happen in 2 weeks or 21 days? It really takes time for even the brain and the body to adjust. We talked about dopamine earlier. Um, Sometimes we even need a good digital detox, and I'm not saying for 90 days, but we need to detox from the speed we've been going at. A lot of us, especially as men and women, have been running at breakneck speed for years. It takes a while to slow that down. You try to slow down a moving train and see how within a couple of seconds, see how much success you have. So
Hmm.
that's why it initially takes 90 days. Because I'm gonna tell you, by the time people get to 4 weeks with me, some of my clients, they've admitted, Jahmaal, I wanted to punch you in the face, man. but I wanted to box on you, and I'm so glad I stuck it out because it comes heavy, and they all know we are going through these exercises never to harm you, but always to arm you and to set you up well going forward and to get your
Mm,
results. I want to give people results. I'm not here about a bunch of talk therapy. That stuff's not effective.
yeah, and it's the people that love you that typically challenge you, and that's what you need to kind of remember sometimes. And I remind myself that all the time when my wife keeps me accountable on the things I said I was going to do.
Be good,
So
man. Yes.
we mentioned the one-on-one coaching before my last question. I want to make sure that folks have your information, Jamal. They can contact you if they hear themselves in some of the things we've been talking about. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, don't be a lone wolf, because there are resources and there are people out there who are willing to walk through the storm and guide you through it. So, Jamal, what are the links? What are the handles? How can folks connect with you, follow you, and get more of the amazing work you're doing?
Got it. One of the easiest ways to link to me, my name is spelled pretty uniquely. Jahmaal. I'm that only Jamal on all of LinkedIn globally and in the whole world. So it's really easy to find me there. And my website's listenthenspeak.com. I can't quote it verbatim, but Calendly, it'll all be in the show notes. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna drop Ted all the show notes links. So he'll drop my Calendly there if you want to meet me for a coaching call. And you can also, for those who like want a freebie, I'll drop that as well. And it's about mitigating burnout. But if you're like, okay, I need something a little bit deeper, hotter, and heavier, jump on that Calendly link as soon as possible and connect with me on LinkedIn.
That's what I'm talking about. And you already know how it goes. Show notes, we'll have the links below. So you guys can go ahead, hit the description in YouTube, or, of course, open up the show notes in whatever app you're listening to, and you'll have all the information there. Jamal, we might have touched on it on the episode. Last question is, what is something you've experienced, seen, or have lived through that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
Ooh, man. We ended heavy here.
How
I
much
would
time we got?
I would say living through the death of my dad um,
Mm,
definitely shaped the way that I view the world. You heard my faith is really important to me, and he had a major stroke, and then his organs began to shut down. Um, and we had walked together, dudes who were world apart, had walked together for 12 years as like brothers in Christ, and just he was my best friend. And so I was there with him, when he transitioned. But shortly after that, I hated God. I hated Jesus. I hated the gospel. And if you're like me, you have clients that don't believe what you believe. I have clients that are atheist, agnostic, Muslim, you name it, Jewish, Christian, or like whatever. Um, but it endeared me for like most of 2018. I wanted to be an atheist, and my prayer life was middle fingers and f bombs, and I did not grieve
mm,
like you see on a Hallmark card. It was very imperfect, and I got to see the love of God through my darkness. I stopped counseling. I stopped doing it for a year. I said that stuff died with him, and it took me a while to come back to life again. And so I've often wondered like why so many people follow my content that don't believe the things I believe, because I'm unashamed about my beliefs, because they know I'm endeared towards the shadow side because I've been there, man. So him passing definitely has informed just how I see God as a father, how I see life, and understanding that this thing is but a vapor. So while you're here, man, don't waste a moment. So for the men and the women under the sound of my voice, you don't know. Tomorrow's not promised, man. And if something, even in this episode or past episodes, the finger and the spotlight of heaven is getting put on you, do something about it. Don't wait.
mm. Yeah, man, drop the mic right there. This has been a fantastic episode. Certified counselor with IABC, former program coordinator for nonprofits, podcaster, consultant, friend, and brother, Jahmaal Marshall, on the podcast. Thank you so much for being on, brother.
Thanks for having me, bro.
It's been a pleasure, and I know we're probably gonna have to run this back. I already could hear the emails coming in and being like, "Hey, man, have that dude back on." But I'm gonna recap some of the amazing things you said along the way really quick. Effective seasonally. CBT, you could focus on the behaviors, but if you don't fix what's underneath, the why behind the what, you still will go back and revert back to those behaviors that you're trying so hard to avoid. What's going on underneath the skin? Are you attacking it at the root, or are you just functioning? The patterns remain a pattern until it's disrupted. Pausing so you can have an informed response. Too many of us, as men specifically, just float through life or autopilot through life, drift, and then we just hustle, 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 and we are not taking the time to reassess where we are, make informed responses and decisions in our day to day. The brick wall can be good, but if you want to turn things around beforehand, it will be less painful if you could avoid the brick wall. Find a way to control everything. Does that sound like you? Are you putting hands in everything? Are you a control freak, or are you the first one in, last one out? Are you working too hard? Are you feeling burnt out? Is it because you're trying to please everybody and not yourself? Are you keeping the peace without, but destroying the peace within just to
Mhm.
keep those relationships going? And then, even further, I'm trying to do the right things, but I just can't do it right. Give yourself grace. Give yourself grace along the way. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Learn how to say no. Realize that there are benefits in the challenges. Experience is the teacher of fools. So learn from others. Sit down with professionals. And yes, we're not talking about COVID coaches. I'm talking about Jahmaal Marshall. He's the man who can get you through whatever you're going through. Feel the feels. And as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you can catch an episode each and every single week. Guys, we love and appreciate you. Thank you so much for making it to the end. And as I always say, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's go.